You're looking at the photographs of Al Satterwhite, a photographer who specializes in shooting for his corporate and advertising clients on location. There's nothing that's too complicated for Satterwhite to tackle, and his years of on-location experience help him pull all the elements together. Recently, however, he had to shoot the underside of a truck for a company that manufactures brake products.
They actually wanted a tractor and a semi raised about, well, off the ground. I figured about 20 feet off the ground so we could shoot up at it. So that was a horrendous problem in finding, they don't normally raise rigs like that. They'll raise a tractor or you drive a tractor over a pit. What we had to do was find a studio large enough to take something like this with about a 40-foot ceiling and a floor strong enough to support 4 cranes, which we were going to bring in to lift this whole rig. And once we got it in position, we would have it welded from underneath with I-beams, which would have to be retouched out later. Then all my lighting and foam core and reflector surfaces and gels would have to be mounted high up. I'd probably have to build a tremendous scaffolding. Well, it turned out to be quite an expensive project, so we figured out what that would cost and found all the necessary cranes, studios, etc. And we put together another estimate in miniature form, and they decided to go with the miniature because of the money factor. And it ended up being about 32 inches long for what we needed to do, and this is called forced perspective. It's that same thing. It's like looking through a very wide-angle lens at this object. We wanted it to be a dirty truck, or we wanted it to be a real truck, so globs on this stuff, and it looks like there's mud on the axles and mud flaps, and then there's oil, shiny black gooey oil dripping off the oil pan, and I mean, he's got all of his detail in the right places, and when you light it properly, I mean, it just looks like a real truck. It's really incredible. But when you see it just exposed on a table, it's like a real shocker because it's built to be shot and seen from one point only. I wanted kind of a dramatic effect, kind of a spotlighty effect, as if it's supposed to be up on a lift and you'd be throwing lights up at it. So what I did was, Techno makes a fiber optic. It fits into a strobe head, and it's a long snaky thing that you can control, and it's got a very small spot effect to it. So what I did was I put one snake, one fiber optic on each wheel drum and lit them that way. So basically I've got light falling on these wheel drums, and there are about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of them, I believe. And then I've got a couple others just kind of barely hitting parts of the underneath of the truck, the oil pan and the axle. I mean, what I'm doing is I'm having some light and some shadow and some light so that you don't see you don't see all the detail, but you see parts of it. And it's a little bit clear, but not a lot clear. I mean, it's not muddy, but it adds to the effect of realism. And then we pump in a little bit of smoke. I mean, when you're shooting, it looks like a lot of smoke, but in the final product, what it does is it breaks up it adds atmosphere, it breaks up the clean lines a little bit, and it looks gritty, it looks real, and that adds to the realism of it.
The completed shot, turned upside down, is so convincing that it could have been shot on location. Satterwhite, known for his location work, finds it ironic that there have been other projects which called for miniature work in the studio.
Well, it's strange, since I do 98% of my work is location work. We had done a couple of ads for Molson Golden Beer, and they were all on location, one out on the beach in Bahamas and one out in the woods in Florida. Then they came up with this shot in the wrong time of the year. They wanted to shoot a winter scene for Christmas, but there was no snow here, and there wouldn't be for another 2 or 3 months. If I'd shot it real in snow, we had to have 2 sleighs with horses in position, and we had to light it, even though it had an available light look. Well, when I got to thinking about all the tracks that my assistants, the horses, and everybody involved would make, it began to seem like it wouldn't be such a great idea to shoot on location, and I'm the absolute last person to turn down a location shoot. But I really, the more I thought about it, the more I thought miniature would be the best. So we went into that, and the detail part was the most important. We made little sleighs, and we had little clay figures in them because I decided to use the shadows, the backlit shadows from the sleighs in the miniatures instead of in the real life because it was easier to control. We made little tracks in the snow with our fingers. I shot it through a 20, and the set was built looking through a 20, and the set builder noticed that when you point a 20 or extreme wide angle lens down, anything near the edge or the corners tends to bow out. I mean, it's very peculiar to wide angle lenses. So what we did was we corrected it. He built them tipped in. So as you tip the lens down, it corrects itself automatically, which is another little plus of doing it in miniature. And we had little strobe lights inside the house, gelled with very warm gel, so it looked like it was warm window light coming out. We had tree line, which the trees were all slanted also, and all these factors we could play with. We had a painted sky that the set builder had made, and we had a little cut-out cardboard moon, which was just a little white blob, a little white circle. We had that on double-stick tape so we could move it around until we decided where we really wanted it. And then we lit that with just a grid spot, one strobe head hitting that, and we got kind of a halo effect around the moon, which you kind of get in the wintertime, and it really added such realism. And that was the key point to the miniature. Every little detail had to be just right, because if one thing was out, then whether you knew it or not, your mind said, there's something wrong with this picture and I'm not believing it. So we spent almost 2 days on the miniature putting it together and playing with the lights and changing the lights and gelling the lights and running Polaroid and Polachrome and some 90-minute Kodachrome tests until we decided we had what we wanted. And then the next day we shot in another studio, we shot the horses and the sleighs and some artificial snow, and that was a piece of cake. It's just a matter of lining up the camera so the angles were identical, which I did by using Polachrome in the first set and then putting it in the viewfinder of my camera and positioning everything in the second set. And the retoucher's job was much simpler. All he had to do was put them in and bleed them off, and they matched perfectly.